If you ever want to know what college is like, I just had a bag of popcorn for dinner. Hey guys, it's Hannah, and today I am doing my January wrap-up and February TBR pretty much on time this month. I also read 7 books in the month of January, which I think is kind of wild considering just how mentally draining and just busy my January was. So the fact that I still managed to read 7 books is amazing, honestly. So the first book I read in the month of January is The Queen of Attolia by Megan Wallen Turner. I will not be shutting up about this series anytime soon. The first book, The Thief by Megan Wallen Turner, is centered around this thief named Jin, and he is locked up in this king's prison, and eventually the magus, who's like the king's advisor, comes and takes him out of it and is like, you're gonna help us steal this thing, because if we have control of that, then we have control of this neighboring kingdom. And Jin is like, okay, fine, I guess so, like what choice do I have? And so he goes along on this journey with them to steal this gift, and it is beautiful. I've talked about it so much recently, so I'm assuming that if you've been keeping up with me, you already know my thoughts and feelings about it, but I love it. This is the second book, and so far, it is my favorite in the series. Something happens within the first, 15 pages of this book that makes your heart stop. And I don't know how to explain any of it without spoiling any of it, but just later on you discover something about some of the characters and I verbally went, what? Because it just seems so absurd, but then oh, it's so good. It's so good. Here's one thing I love about it is her characters are fantastic. I feel like I've done more talking about the world and how just impressive it is, but also just her characters are so good. They're just so amazing. And so essentially there's these 3 kingdoms, and one is ruled by a king and these other 2 are both ruled by queens. And one of the queens is a pretty, diplomatic ruler, but the other one is a little more heartless. But just the way they're both portrayed, you never hate either of them because they're both so inherently human, and just the way she goes about doing that, I love it. I don't know what else I can say without spoiling it, but something happens towards the end of the book and just throughout the entire book, oh my goodness, and you're just constantly in awe of these characters and in love with these characters. Like I said, there's not a character that I don't love except for that one, but it works out with him. I highly recommend this series. It's so good. The next book I read was O'Keefe and Texas by Sharon Rolfson Udall. I'm not quite sure if I'm saying her name right. This is essentially a published essay about Georgia O'Keeffe and the time she spent when she was living in Texas. She taught in Amarillo first, and then she moved on up to Canyon, Texas, and taught at the university there. And at first it took me a while to get into because I feel like I've become accustomed to reading books about Georgia O'Keeffe where they're just more personable and it's like you know her and you're just hearing from her, because the first book was a diary account of someone living with her, Weekends with O'Keeffe by C.S. Merrill, and then I read her autobiography, so that's very, personable. And so to read this essay, it just felt so distant from her, so it took me a while to get into it that way, but once I got into it, I just enjoyed learning about that time of her life and it became enjoyable. I will say I wish that the pictures were presented in the order that they were mentioned in. I don't know if I was missing something, but they weren't in the order that they come up in the text, and so I had to do a lot of flipping to find the one they were talking about, which I can't really complain because then I got to look at all her others again, but it would have been nice to have that in order so I'm not constantly flipping back and forth trying to find the painting that they're talking about. All that being said though, I did end up really enjoying it. I do highly recommend reading it, especially if you're into Georgia O'Keeffe, want more information about Georgia O'Keeffe and her time in Texas. I will say that was another reason I liked it so much, is because it talks about Texas. I live in Texas. I love Texas. So it was just good for me. The third book I read in the month of January was The King of Attolia by Megan Wallen Turner. This book, okay, it took them all to get into this one because we switched the point of view in this one, and so it's told in a different way at the beginning, and I wasn't loving the new character they introduced, and I wasn't loving the way it was told because I felt like I wasn't getting that personal connection with the characters that I just love and hold so dear. But again, at a certain point, I'd say it was probably, about here maybe, so about halfway I think. I don't remember exactly though. It hooked me, and I actually have a tab in this. I have a book dart. Hang on. My mom got me these for Christmas one time and I've never used them before, but I now have used my book dart because there's this one scene. Here's one thing I love about this book, and it's something that I've just kind of noticed throughout my reading career, but I guess I'm just now verbally mentioning this. I really like the subtlety of romance. I'm not the kind of person that, you know, here's a steamy sex scene, I'm all over that. I'd rather not. I don't like reading that kind of thing, but I love a subtle romance. Like the little glances, the knowing glances, the like little soft moments, the random holding of hands. It's like the little things that I feel like, I guess most people don't really notice or care about. I'm not sure if you like that kind of thing too, let me know. But that is what I love about romances. I like the little things, the subtleness. And this is just full of that, and I love it. It also had a lot of just kind of like a domesticity that I also really enjoy a lot. And so I really enjoyed that. And just after a while, I feel like we got back to Jen. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. But we got back to Jen, and I was so happy when that happened. This is not my favorite in the series, Queen of Attolia. Still the best in the series so far. But it's, I don't know where it qualifies with the theme. Might be second, it's probably second, let's be real. I think this might be my second favorite in the series. Now, before you ask, I haven't continued on with the series yet, because I'm scared. One reason I'm scared is because I feel like I just don't have the time to be sucked into a book right now. But another reason is I read a little like blurb it had at the beginning of something that happens and it scared me. So I haven't continued on. I'm going to, probably once February is over, because my February is going to be wild. I will finish this lovely and beautiful series, but I needed a little break. My heart was starting to hurt a bit and it needed time to mend. Next book I read was Miss Buncle's Book by D.E. Stevenson. This is a book that if you saw my, I think, you know, January wrap up and then my haul for Christmas. I got this for Christmas. My cousin and my sister both also got it and we all try to buddy read it at some point throughout the year. So half the time it doesn't happen where we're all reading it at the same time. Just eventually throughout the year we will have all read it. I am the first one to finish because my cousin stopped reading it. I put down the next book in the Queen's Thief series initially because she said she was reading it, and then she wasn't. But I finished it. This book is about Miss Barbara Buncle, and she is in need of some money, and so she writes a book. But she doesn't think she has a very good imagination, so she can't make things up. So she just writes about the people in her town. And people fall in love with the book, and once that book is published, it ends up in her hometown, and some of the people aren't exactly happy about her portrayal of them. But none of them know that she's the one that wrote the book, because she did it under a pseudonym. So then it's just about the town in an uproar about this book that came out, and it was lovely. This is by far my favorite D.E. Stephen book I have read so far. It was just the most fun. And again, I don't know if you can see them, but I have tabbed quite a bit in this book. The things I have tabbed are not just like, you know, cute scenes or whatever. There is one, but they're not just cute scenes or whatever. They are scenes with a certain character. Mrs. Featherstone Hogg is exactly like an aunt of mine. I have an aunt, and if you have read Pride and Prejudice or have seen the BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, the Keira Knightley movie obviously also has this character, but she's not as accurate as obviously the book or the BBC miniseries. But if you know of the character Mrs. Bennet, that is my aunt. And whenever my family finds a character that is like Mrs. Bennet, and therefore like my aunt, we all let the others know and we all read that book or watch that movie, because at this point we just like to get a kick out of it. And this book has my aunt. It just makes any book just a little more fantastic because I can relate so well to it. Also, I just like to point out that I love how in books like this, people compliment people's teeth. There were like 3 times that someone would compliment someone else's teeth, and I really enjoyed that. It just cracks me up. Another thing I really liked about this book is there's this one chapter where after she wrote the book, she's getting all of these reviews in from all these different newspapers and magazines and stuff, and just how completely contrasted they are. Like, one will be just completely praising the book and saying it's the best thing on this earth, and then the next one is like condemning it, like this was evil, born of the devil, oh, you should never read it, this is an awful book. And just the contrast in it and just how accurate that is, just how people's opinions can completely vary on a book. It cracked me up, made me a little sad at the points too, but just cracked me up, and I thought it was beautiful. So this book is just a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. Again, it has that classic tone that a D. Stevenson always has, and if you're in the mood for a good, fun, quick read, highly recommend this one. The next book I read was Water Runs Red by Jenna Claire. Now you might be recognizing that name. She's actually a YouTuber. I actually got this book on a whim. On her Twitter, I follow her on Twitter, she posted a giveaway for her book. And I, had been following along with her publishing journey, so I knew she was publishing a book, but it was a poetry book. And I'm not the biggest poetry person, so I wasn't going to purchase it or anything. But then when she had the giveaway, I thought, you know what? I like what she does on YouTube and everything, so I might like this book. So I'll just, I'll enter it. I probably won't win. I'll just give it a shot though. And then I won. So I won an e-arc of her book. I don't have the formatting that she'll have in her actual book, but it's all of the poetry that she has. And I was so pleasantly surprised. I loved this book. The thing I loved about it is it read like poetry, but it also read like a story, and it had a definitive flow to it. In her prologue, she talks a lot about creation, so it feels like that's the creation of the book, and then she slowly moves into the story, and you just like see this story progress. Not gonna lie, I was reading this when I was having just a pretty and bad day, and some of the stuff she discusses in her poems just created this kinship between me and the book because it was just so relatable. And when you read it, you can tell that she's not like writing these things because it's like what's in now, or like the thing to do, or like the things you should be talking about in this day and time. You could tell just like the author is writing what she's feeling, and then she just happened to publish it. Like, it doesn't sound fake at any point. Everything just sounds so authentic, and that just makes you love it all the more. Most of the poems about a love in a friendship, and I really liked that too, because I just liked how it focused on the love that is between friends and not just, I love a guy or I love a girl in a romantic way or whatever that situation is. It's just friendship love, and I really liked that. The only main problem I had with this, and it wasn't even really a problem, it's just that the ending felt a bit long. I knew it was getting close to the end, and I kept reading poems that just felt like a very good and definitive ending, and then it would keep going, so that made it feel like it dragged out a little bit. But other than that, I just really enjoyed it. It had me hooked. I thought it was beautiful, and I can't wait to see what she does with the layout. So I highly recommend you go check it out. I don't think you can order a physical book yet. I think you have to wait till her release date, which I'll leave her info down below if you're interested in that. I'm not in any way being told to promote her book or anything. I literally just happened to win her e-arc competition and just happened to love it. So this is nothing sponsored or paid or whatever people do with those kinds of things. So none of that. All my opinions. I don't normally love poetry, but I loved this book. The next book I read was a reread. I wonder if I should turn my light on. We'll go with this weird lighting. It's slowly getting darker outside, so. But the next book I read was a reread for me, and this was Kilkenny by Lewis L'Amour. This is a book I read years ago, back in 2013, I think. It happened because my sister had a gymnastics meet in Oklahoma, and we were up there, and I don't remember what book I had brought, but I wasn't liking it, and so I wasn't wanting to read it, but I was getting bored because it was the gaps in between when my sister competes. You can watch other people, but after a while you've seen enough bar routines and full routines that you get a little bit tired of it. And my dad was reading a book called Monument Rock by Lewis L'Amour, and it was a book of short stories. And he had set it down when he went, I think, get food or something or go talk to somebody, and so I picked it up and I started reading it, and I started loving it, so I stole his book, and I finished his book, and he just ended up talking to people the whole time. After I finished reading it, I was like, I really like this Kilkenny character, and he was like, there's actually a whole series dedicated to this guy, and so he gave me the books. I actually ended up reading the third one first, which is Kilkenny. I didn't realize that the book with his name would not be the first book. And then again, I just picked up Kilkenny because I knew it was about Kilkenny, and I couldn't remember which ones were the first ones, and so I read the third one first in my reread session. And I just remember loving it. And then so I read it again, and I loved it again. I gave this 5 stars on Goodreads, and I will say probably part of the reason it is a 5 stars for me is because of just the nostalgic feeling that it gives me. I love it so much. Realistically, maybe technically this is just, a 4-star read, but no, it's a 5-star because it just makes me think back to simpler times. But this is the last book in a trilogy about this gunslinger, and he is trying to finally settle down. He's been on the run. His name's Lance Kilkenny, by the way. And he's in this restaurant, and this kid is trying to start this fight, and he draws faster, and so he shoots the kid. He ends up in the town where the dad of the kid actually lives, and he's seeking revenge. There's also this whole, like, turf war going on. I guess not turf war, that's more like mobs and stuff, isn't it? Land war with cattle and stuff. And his perpetual love interest comes back in, and I really enjoyed this book. It was very nostalgic for me. I love his characters. I love Lance Kilkenny. I don't know what it is about him, but I love him a lot. Nita Riordan, what a woman. Highly recommend this book. But just remember, it's the third book in a series, so don't read it first, because you'll be confused. I speak from experience. I'm gonna turn my light on. There's gonna be a drastic light change. Get ready for it. Ooh, look at that. And the final book that I read in the month of January was Ride the River by Louis L'Amour. And guys, I have found it. If you have been keeping up with me for a while, then you might remember that I have been looking for, well, I haven't found it because this isn't young adult, but I've been looking for a young adult Western where the lead is a female, where she's not turned into such a rough person that you just can't love her. Though this isn't YA, I have found that girl. So basically this book is a Sackett book, which is one of his big series that goes on in his writing, and it's about Echo Sackett. She is the youngest, and she has this inheritance that she has to go collect, and so she goes off to collect it. But the lawyer and some other bad guys are wanting to keep that from her, and they are doing everything in their power to do so. Here's what I love about Echo. She has this like dress that she made, and it's so beautiful, and she's so excited to wear it, and then as she's put it on, she's talking about the logistics of hog trapping. She was just this perfect blend of like a traditional feminine side, but then this like rough and tough mountain girl, and I just really liked that. I loved her so much because she would make mistakes. She would lose stuff at some points, but then she'd be like, okay, I'm gonna go get it back, and so she would just go get it back. She's such a strong character, but then she also has moments where she's like, I just want to go home. Like, I'm tired of this. I just want to go home. So she has those little moments of weakness, but she never lets them overcome her. I loved it so much. I want more. I finished this and I immediately looked up to see if there was any more with her. Couldn't find any. I am very frustrated with that. But this is just beautiful. And there is like, you know, a little love, but it's like funny one in a way because he expected her to be this like traditional lady that he was used to, and she's like, well, I am a lady, but also I can shoot better than you. And it just, oh, it amused me so much. It was very enjoyable. I loved her so much. I loved the whole book so much. Highly recommend. If you're wanting a Western with a female lead who you won't hate, here it is. It's not young adult, but oh well. We'll still work on trying to find that young adult one, I guess. But here's a female character that is fantastic and the lead of a Western. Miracles happen, guys. Miracles happen. Louis L'Amour makes miracles happen. I've already read one book in the month of February. Big surprise. It was a Louis L'Amour one. I am not currently reading a Louis L'Amour book. I'm taking a break from him. I am reading, here, hang on, Famous in a Small Town by Emma Mills. This is just the cover. I think the actual book's in my backpack, and I'm not gonna dig it out. I'm about halfway through. I'm not loving it, but I'm not hating it. It's just, you know, it's decent so far, which I'm a little upset about, because normally Emma Mills, her books hook me and I love them so much. A little bit disappointing in that way, but it's not bad by any means, so we'll see. After that, I went to complete my rereading of the Kilkenny series. The next one I'll read is The Rider of the Lost Creek, which I might be wrong because I suddenly blanked, but I'm pretty sure this is the first book in the series. And then I also have The Mountain Valley War, which I'm pretty sure is the second book in this series. And then I have Monument Rock, which is the short story collection, which I'm pretty sure also has short stories with other characters, but the Kilkenny one is the one I am most interested in. I've just become in the mood for Westerns. I guess I ought to mention that. I'm in a Texas history class, and it's just kind of put me in the mood for Westerns. And so I'm just letting that feeling take me off, and I just am binge reading Louis L'Amour books. I have a couple others that I have with me here that are like mine that I might get to if I continue on this. I just want to read Western trend, and I'm gonna go home pretty soon probably, and I can always, you know, borrow some from my dad's collection. So we're just gonna ride this train for as long as it's gonna take. So that's it for this video. Comment down below, let me know if you are also the kind of person that just likes the subtlety of romance, the little things that you have to like, you know, look to notice, but when you notice them, they're just so cute. Also comment down below and let me know if there's like a specific genre or area of interest that you've just recently gotten into and you're just letting it take you wherever it ends up taking you, because that is me with Westerns right now. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all again in another one soon.